Earth. Home. The third blue rock from the Sun, the only known planet where life can thrive. We have around 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, and 1% argon, water vapor, and carbon dioxide, give or take. The perfect balance to support our respiration. The troposphere is the lowest and densest part of Earth's atmosphere, 5 to 9 miles thick. It's the part of the atmosphere that keeps changing our weather. For any life to exist, we would need this atmosphere and the same combination of gases to breathe. If all the planets in our solar system were combined to become a mega-Earth, then humans wouldn't have evolved the way we are today, and we'd have a very different planet. If we take the landscape of Mars, we'll only have solid land without large bodies of water. Earth is the only planet in our solar system with bodies of water. One of the first wonders to see will be Olympus Mons, the largest volcano in the solar system. It towers Mount Everest by a long shot at 78,000 feet above the ground. Velis Marineris is a group of canyons that make the Grand Canyon in the U.S. feel like a average one. This wonder stretches for almost 2,500 miles and goes more than 4 miles deep. On top of these epic terrains, there's plenty of other grand-scale locations on Mars that are way bigger than the ones on Earth. The planet might be as large as Jupiter. If the Earth were the size of a grape, then Jupiter would be the size of a basketball. We'd have the size of Jupiter and the rings of Saturn floating around us. The rings may seem like some large chunks of rock in the air, but they're actually ice particles and chunks of iced rocks. They range from the size of pebbles to car-sized ones. Saturn's rings are supported by the unique gravity in the region. With a lot of these ice rocks floating in the sky, there won't be much sunlight entering the planet, which means the planet will always be colder than usual. Not to mention the many moons it has. Our megaplanet could also have many moons circling above us, contributing to the tidal waves. Jupiter is known for the red spot, a place twice the size of Earth that has hurricane-like storms that have been going on for hundreds of years. The people of Mega-Earth will settle far away from it. Mercury is a planet but looks like the Moon due to all the craters lying around. That's because of many asteroids and comets striking it over billions of years. But the landscape here mainly consists of mountains, highlands, cliffs, and valleys. The Colossal Basin is almost 1,000 miles wide. They believe it was formed by a comet. The deserts on Earth are mainly hot and consist of dunes of sand, but they also have flat plains and small hills. The largest desert in the world is the whole Antarctic continent. Mercury has no atmosphere to trap any heat, so it gets really hot when the sun is facing it and freezing cold when the planet turns away from it. On this combined mega-Earth, the desert will most likely have a similar landscape to that of Mercury. The animals living here will probably be something like giant scorpions and desert snakes that soak in some sun during the day and go out hunting at night. But the soaring day temperatures would melt anyone walking. And even though Mercury is the closest planet to the Sun, it's not the hottest. Venus has temperatures of nearly 900 degrees Fahrenheit. Scientists believe that the lands here are flat because of the extreme temperatures, but it's not all flat, with some volcanoes and highland areas. We can probably find this terrain and climate near the equator, since it's always hot there. Humans can't live there unless they build special domes to sustain life. But since the planet is now huge, not all its territory needs to be populated. Some areas will have the proper atmosphere for breathing, but some places might not have such luxuries. Over at the poles, the climate will most likely mimic Pluto's, even though it's not technically a planet anymore. In 2006, they officially declared it a dwarf planet, and it's even smaller than the Moon. There's not much known about this little mini floating rock, except that it's composed of around 70% rock and 30% ice. Scientists believe that a part of its surface is covered in frozen nitrogen, solid methane, and carbon dioxide. Since the megaplanet is huge, gravity might be quite strong here. Jupiter's gravity is enough to double your weight. Humans will most likely be really tall and mega-sized to match the big planet. Even the oceans will be huge. Our oceans will look like little lakes compared to what Mega-Earth has in store for us. Humans need something close to 24 hours in a single day. Our bodies adjusted to it quite well, but it wouldn't affect us too much if the day had a few extra hours or a few hours less. We can't live on any other planet without wearing the proper gear. We wouldn't last more than a few seconds in places like Jupiter, Neptune, and Saturn. It's possible to last as long as you can hold your breath on Mars. The atmosphere is thin and the gravity is similar to ours, but you might freeze. Even though it's a red planet, it's actually very cold and has ice caps in the poles covered with carbon dioxide. The same's true for Mercury. You can only last there as long as you can hold your breath and be in the sweet spot between the sunrise and the sunset. Ancient civilizations wouldn't have been as diverse as they were on Earth, since the extreme terrains and conditions wouldn't have allowed for discovery and training. But eventually, as humans developed special technologies for certain areas, different cultures would emerge. Many animals would also evolve in specific and unique ways. But because of the planet's enormous size, isolation, and being on top of the food chain would let certain animals be around since the beginning of the planet without evolving. So it's possible that this mega-Earth might have ancient dinosaurs roaming around, and they'd be even bigger than the ones on Earth. And even though there's a high chance that some humans might be physically different than each other, there might even be more than one species of humans living on opposite ends of the planet. Because of the isolation, they evolved in their own ways according to their surroundings. Over the centuries, technological advancements would spread different cultures around, and we'd be more open to each other. Neanderthals and Homo sapiens once lived side by side and were considered as the two species of humans. Neanderthals were intelligent and used tools for hunting and drawing. Homo sapiens were survivors and wandered around to discover new land. There could be two dominant human species and other minor ones that live in certain areas on Mega-Earth. They'd be bigger, tougher, and faster than us. The ones who live by the trees would have elongated limbs to stretch out and swing from tree to tree. The ones that live in savannas will probably run really fast and have long legs for that. Countries and cities will be bigger than what we have on regular Earth. A country can be as big as Earth itself. The human population can reach tens of billions. Special transportation technology might be invented for people to travel from one continent to another. Covering those distances can take months or even years if using regular aircraft. High-speed trains that travel so fast over land and rocket-like planes going through the sky. Traveling through oceans will require extremely sturdy ships. Traveling through the Atlantic Ocean is already scary for many, so imagine going on a voyage across a body of water that's potentially 8 times the size of Earth. We're going to need a bigger boat. There'll be areas to avoid, like the red spot with its perpetual storms raging on, but the tourist industry might have some room for anyone who wants to see it. Living on such a huge planet is unlikely going to become a reality for most of us anytime soon. But scientists are already discussing moving to other planets to find a new home for humans.
Have you ever wondered what it would be like if every planet in our solar system was the size of Earth? Well, it's time to dive into this mind-boggling scenario. Let's imagine what each planet would look like if they were as big as our beloved blue planet. Would the barren red landscape of Mars suddenly become a lush green oasis? Would the massive swirling gas giant Jupiter just disappear? And how would it affect our solar system as a whole? Are we all doomed? Buckle up and let's find out. The first planet on our list is Mercury, the smallest planet in our solar system. But now, forget about the moon-like Mercury. Instead, picture yourself on the surface of a super dynamic incandescent inferno. There are a lot of craters and active volcanoes around you, and right in front of you is a huge, blinding bright sun. What a nightmare! But let's break these changes down. Well, along with the size of Mercury, both its mass and gravity would increase. In that case, it's possible that Mercury would have more atmosphere. Temperatures on Mercury are extreme, not only because it's very close to the sun, but also because of its very thin atmosphere. So during the day, the temperatures there reach 800 degrees Fahrenheit. And at night, it becomes terrifyingly cold, down to -290 degrees Fahrenheit. But now, when the gravity is stronger, Mercury could have a denser atmosphere, so the heat would be better distributed across the planet. And the atmosphere isn't the only thing that could make it hotter. If Mercury became bigger, it would likely experience increased internal heating due to gravitational compression. And hypothetically, its tectonic activity could increase. In other words, more interesting landscape, more mountains, and more scary active volcanoes. Congratulations, you've turned Mercury into Venus 2.0. For us, all these changes wouldn't be very pleasant. Now it would become much harder to send our spacecraft there, so it's better for Mercury to stay as it is, small, calm, and boring. Basically, the complete opposite of our next planet, Venus. So what would happen to Venus if it was Earth-sized? Actually, nothing. It wouldn't change at all because Venus is already almost the size of Earth. It's even called the Earth's twin, although twin is a big word, of course. In reality, we couldn't be more different. Venus is often called the morning star because it's so bright and visible in the sky. But don't let its beauty fool you. This planet is one of the most inhospitable places in our solar system. Its surface is hotter than a freshly baked pizza, around 900 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's covered in thick clouds of sulfuric acid that would dissolve any human who tried to visit. So, unfortunately, you won't be planning any trips there anytime soon. So let's move on to a planet that, unlike Venus, could potentially become a new home for us, Mars. Picture yourself standing on Mars's surface, watching the blue sunset and breathing in a refreshing breeze of air. Yes, you read that right, air. Moreover, you could be surrounded by plants, animals, and basically feel like you're on Earth. But how is that possible? Bigger Mars would have a stronger magnetic field and gravity. This would lead to a richer and denser atmosphere. It would likely have a wider range of gases, including oxygen. Wouldn't that be cool? Also, a denser atmosphere could distribute heat across the planet, so Mars would become much warmer and cozier. And here comes the most important change: liquid water. Mars actually has some frozen water at its poles and in subsurface reservoirs. But with a stronger gravitational pull, it could potentially stabilize liquid water on its surface. Hooray! However, it's not all fun and games. New Mars would also have a volcanic personality. It's already geologically active, but now its internal heat and pressure would skyrocket. That means more frequent and more crazy volcanic eruptions. Imagine how exciting it would be to witness such eruptions on another planet, if you manage to escape the consequences. In general, the planet could become greener and lusher, but not safer, although it would still be great to see it. But it's time to move on to the giants of our solar system. And if we're enlarging the planets before, now it's time to squeeze them really, really hard. If Jupiter became 11 times smaller, oh boy, what a disaster that would be. The first thing we'd notice is a change in gravity. And I say we'd notice because now we'd have no choice but to move somewhere. Jupiter experiences from 30 to 100 collisions with large asteroids per year. No big deal, all because of its strongest gravity, which attracts them all and protects us. But now our big protective brother has turned into a small baby. Say hi to a bunch of asteroids. Oh, and say bye-bye to Jupiter. This planet is known for its thick, swirling atmosphere. But with a weaker gravitational pull, Jupiter would probably have a hard time holding on to it. So over time, it would slowly escape into space, leaving behind a thin atmosphere composed mainly of nitrogen and oxygen. We'll also have to bid farewell to the iconic appearance of another giant, Saturn. The most noticeable difference would be the disappearance of its famous rings. Made up of small particles of ice and rock, the rings are a unique feature of Saturn. But with Earth's gravity, they would either fall onto the planet or scatter into space. Bummer. Saturn is also a gas giant, just like Jupiter. Its atmosphere is made up of mostly hydrogen and helium. But if it were Earth-sized, its gases would be compressed due to the increased gravity. This would make it much denser. That means Saturn's overall size and shape would change. Theoretically, if we squeeze Saturn hard, it could potentially become a brown dwarf. It's a type of failed star that lacks the mass to sustain nuclear fusion, but emits heat and light. So, Saturn could stop being a planet altogether. The weather on it would probably have changed too. All its crazy storms, such as the famous hexagonal storm at its North Pole, would have become weaker and calmer. The next giant is Uranus. Let's try to compress this poor fella. First off, the surface gravity on Uranus would be much weaker than it is now. Its atmosphere might also change. If Uranus was smaller, it could have a thinner atmosphere and different gases altogether. This planet is pretty chilly, with an average temperature of -353 degrees Fahrenheit. Ugh. But if it was the size of Earth, it might actually warm up a bit due to its reduced volume to surface area ratio. Don't get too excited though, it would still be way colder than the coldest spots on Earth. As you can see, gas giants don't easily go through all this shrinking, except perhaps one of them. Surprisingly, small Neptune would become much friendlier. For starters, it would probably be a rocky planet with a tiny atmosphere. That means no more gas giant, but instead, a planet that's easier for humans and critters alike to live and move around on. Speaking of movement, because of the smaller size, the gravity on this new Neptune would be almost the same as Earth's, making it a heck of a lot easier to walk and jump around. No more floating away into space. Now, the atmosphere of the original Neptune is so thick you could barely see your hand in front of your face. And the surface pressure is about 100 times that of Earth's atmosphere. But our new Neptune would be much different, with a much thinner and less dense atmosphere. It would still have some methane, water, and ammonia in it, but nowhere near as much as before. Finally, the temperature. The current Neptune is freezing, with an average temperature of about -370 degrees Fahrenheit. But if it was the same size as Earth, it would likely be much warmer, just like Uranus. Ah, that's more like it. What a planet that would be. That's it for the changes in the planets. But what would happen to the entire solar system if we made all the planets so small? It's hard to predict, but it's clear that their gravity and orbits could change a lot. It's unlikely that any of them would have flown into outer space, or crashed into each other, or something like that. But many of their orbits would probably become quite unstable, and the number of collisions with asteroids would have increased significantly. Of course, all this is purely speculation. It's not like we can actually test all this. But it's still a pretty interesting thought experiment, and it makes you appreciate just how unique and special our solar system really is.
We've discovered Kepler-22b, a small exoplanet in the Cygnus constellation. Seems like nothing important, right? But it's actually a big deal. This is the first planet located in the habitable zone that was found by the Kepler telescope. In other words, there may be water on this planet, and if there's water, there may be life. Kepler-22b can become our new potential home. So let's take a closer look at it. Actually, discovering new planets is not easy at all. Not all of them can be seen through our super cool telescopes, even the almighty Hubble. Sometimes, the stars are so small and dim that it's really hard to find them on a map. The same thing happened with Kepler-22. In such cases, scientists have to use a special method. First, they take a bunch of photos of the star in different periods of time. Then, they look at them and think, are there any dark dots on this star somewhere? And if they find one, that might be a planet. These photos actually help us to discover some very important stuff. Like, first of all, this planet exists. Secondly, here is its size, radius, and proximity to the star. And finally, will we be able to live there? Now we know that Kepler-22b is very similar to our planet and could potentially become a second Earth. It's also very close to us, only 635 light-years away. Yeah, it's about 3 quadrillion miles, but this is one of the closest options. Kepler-22, the star of Kepler-22b, is a yellow dwarf. It's very, very similar to our Sun. The same size, the same radius, Even the age is almost the same, 4 billion years. The difference is only in luminosity. It's about 20% dimmer than the Sun. So, no matter how much you strain your eyes, you won't see this star in the night sky. The planet Kepler-22b is about 2.4 times larger than our Earth, and that's pretty good. More radius means more potential water and space to live. Although going from one city to another would take a while. It's scary to even imagine a 3-day-long plane flight. We don't know the exact mass of this planet, but scientists think it's bigger than Earth's. Actually, the mass of Kepler-22b can be up to 36 times greater than that of our planet. What does it mean? Vigorous gravity. If the planet is 36 times heavier than Earth, then gravity there will be about 6 times stronger. Can you barely lift 20 pounds of potatoes? Try 120. Not to mention that you yourself can become much heavier on that planet. You'll have to get incredibly pumped up just to walk there. You have to literally turn yourself into a bodybuilder just to get to work. The worst thing is that with such gravity, it'd be incredibly difficult for plants to survive there. They'd need at least a little freedom to rise up from the ground. And animals. Our dogs and cats would have to turn into little balls of muscle to survive there. But if this planet has its own animals or other inhabitants, we can roughly imagine what they may look like. They probably have a lot of legs to make moving easier. They aren't really tall, but they're very massive and extremely strong. Muscular giant spiders? Could be worse, I guess. The good news is that this is all unconfirmed information. If we're very lucky, and gravity there turns out to be just a bit stronger than Earth's, then, of course, it'll be much easier to live there. The next thing we know about Kepler-22b is that it's about 15% closer to its star than we are to the Sun. If Kepler-22b existed in our solar system, it would be located somewhere between Earth and Venus. Does that mean we're all going to burn? No, silly. As I mentioned before, the star Kepler-22 is pretty cold, just some 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's why we can assume that the temperatures on Kepler-22b will be about the same as we have on Earth. If the planet orbits its star the same way Earth orbits the Sun, which we don't actually know, Kepler-22b can rotate around its star on its side, like, for example, Uranus. What? Didn't you know Uranus is actually lying on its side? Also, look at its rings. Yes, Uranus also has rings, like Saturn, but they're vertical. The universe is truly a mysterious place. So, if Kepler-22b is really something like that, then the weather on the planet will be, to put it mildly, not very good. Incredibly cold winters will be regularly followed by hot summers. And, just like with tidally locked planets, we'd be able to live more or less comfortably only on the narrow piece of land between these two crazy sides. Let's hope that this is not the case and the planet rotates normally. But it's not all that bad. Studies show that there may be an ocean on Kepler-22b. You already know that water means life, but in this case, it's also a big plus because a planet covered by an ocean always has more stable temperatures. The water absorbs some of the heat and distributes it evenly across the planet. The hot parts cool down, and the icy ones warm up. By the way, that's exactly what happened to Earth billions of years ago. When our planet started getting its first little puddles, our beloved moon helped these puddles to spread all over the planet. Thanks to this, a burning horror that used to be our Earth turned into a cute little ball full of life. So, if Kepler-22b has water but no atmosphere, scientists think that the average temperature there could be around 12 degrees Fahrenheit. But if there's also an Earth-like atmosphere, then the temperature can reach 72 degrees Fahrenheit. That would be nice. And finally, 1 year there is equal to 290 Earth days, about 9 months. The planet has no natural satellites, so unfortunately, we'd have to say goodbye to a beautiful view of the moon. On the bright side, we'd probably be able to see the sun as a distant little star. We could admire it in the night sky, remembering our home, while not hiding from giant spiders. and this is all that we know at the moment. Unfortunately, it's quite difficult to explore such planets, so there's a lot of very important data that we don't know. For example, what kind of planet is this anyway? Yep, we're missing the most important information about Kepler-22b. We don't know if it's a rocky planet or not. And if not, then all the previously mentioned information means nothing. It may turn out to be a gas planet, or a planet covered with gas but with a solid core, like Neptune, or a water world covered with a giant ocean. In this case, it better be a water planet. Then at least we could build some kind of underwater city there. We could filter the water and eat fish, until we evolve into an amphibious species. Does it even count as evolution if we go back to our roots? Scientists, however, think that Kepler-22b may turn out to be a Neptune-like planet. Some astronomers have even assigned the planet to a category of mini-Neptunes. Yes, this is a real planetary category. But this hasn't been proven yet. But even if, fortunately for us, Kepler-22b turns out to be a rocky planet, we still don't know what the atmosphere is like there. Does it exist at all? What if it turns out to be something like the atmosphere of Venus, which is more toxic than your ex? Then we'd have to dig deep underground to somehow survive on this planet. And then we'd have to come up with a heat source, because it's pretty cold underground. Yeah, let's hope this won't be the case. There are many possibilities with Kepler-22b. So far, we don't have a clear answer. But let's hope that scientists will find it before we load the first people into shuttles and send them to conquer Kepler-22b. That would be awkward if it turns out to be a gas planet, or something like that.